Ani bojo, wawshka makons indigenous cause, megase dodem, na memenis and donjaba, ogi mawaj gishan kaso mishomis, mishipsi kwe gishan kaso nokmis. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for the third and final session of Anishinaabek Doodemag. We've got a fun-filled night again. Lots to talk about, lots of slides to share. So I'm gonna get started and sharing the screen. I just want to say miigwech to all those who are attending for the third time, and welcome to those ones that are just joining us tonight. For those ones that missed the previous two sessions, they can feel free to go on the Cultural Alliance website and watch the last two sessions. They're on there already. Karen was really good. Karen Mailing from the town of Midland, who works with the Cultural Alliance, was really good in putting up the next day. So we'll see if this one gets put on tomorrow. So tonight we're going to go ahead and move forward within some Gigon Dodems, as well as some Matig, some Mukwa, and some Beneshi Dodems. Once again, we're reminded to have a good presentation etiquette for those ones that that don't know or that are joining us. Your microphone will be muted automatically. It'll be open up for question and answer period as well as we go along. I'll keep the chat open too as well to try to be able to answer some of those questions as we roll along. If you have any questions, just raise your emoji hand, and as well as questions can be asked in the chat room. And when you have your microphone on, just be mindful of the background noise. And be respectful too as well. So again, like the last two presentations, I just wanted to share a slide of the areas that I've been talking about, all the way up to Shawniga, even some in Manado Minis, down to Goderich, as well as to Georgina Island and everywhere in between. So first, we're going to start off with the Gigo and Dodem, or the Fish Clan. The Fish Clan was a pretty prominent clan in the area and still is today. They've moved around all over the place, just like fish do. So in the early documentation within the Chippewas of Lakes Huron and Simcoe, we had a lot of Pike Clan. Those early ones that first signed provisional agreements for Penetanguishene, as well as Pre-Confederate Treaty Number 5, Walbon, and as well as within Treaty Number 18, we had Manitowoc as well. And it says there in the treaty, it says Mandevil, but those ones fluent with Anishinaabe and others, know that was just the ignorance on behalf of those ones that were interpreting at the time period. We know there's different interpretations for this name throughout all Anishinaabe King, but this is not it. For those that don't know, it would be I've heard different translations in terms of that one speaks from the heart or speaks from the spirit or is guided by the spirits, and some other ones. In the provisional agreement of 1811, which was the precursor to Treaty 16, we had a Neonquit and Peshagokung as well signed with Pike Nginoje Dodem. The Snake family from what is now Georgina Island was a pretty prominent family back at this time period. There's some different names during this time that have kind of confused me. From the 1815 Treaty 16, we had Ginebik Nene as it states, or Snake Man. And then from Treaty 18, 2 years later, there's a name called Kekikwam, or how we said before, like Karagegwin, it could be pronounced as too, but it says or snake beside it. So whether this is the chief or not, it's, it could be, because I do remember reading it within the minutes of that treaty. And then we have in 1831 a petition from William Snake, who was one of the chiefs of the Chippewas of Lakes Huron and Simcoe. And then later on we had in 1837, we had an appointment for Thomas Nanagishkung to act on behalf of the band to be like their lawyer, the Chippewas Lake Huron Simcoe's main representative, so to speak, to deal with the government at this time period. So James Snake had come on behalf of William Snake, his father. And then down here at Holland's Landing, we have Joe Snake, his Anishinaabe name too, as well, within the muster list. And then both Joseph and James Snake listed as chiefs in 1846. And throughout this time period in the 40s and 50s, we see both their names on a lot of petitions working together as headmen. So they stayed in Coldwater for a few years, and then they had went back down to what is known as Ganabik Manis, or Snake Island in southern Lake Simcoe, and then worked from there and got back to what they were doing before they went to Coldwater. They had there was many petitions over the years with these guys too, with Yellowhead and Chief Assets and Nanagishkung and all the other head chiefs or sub chiefs. But these names here kind of stick out for the next 20 years. Joseph Snake was they were part of the Catfish clan, and in 1860 they were put on the list to be delegates to go down to Sarnia and to receive that or to go to the Grand Council, and also to meet with the Prince of Wales. And then but they ended up going. The states within another paperwork from Bartlett on August 13th, 1860, that the delegates have been chosen by the principal chief, Joseph Snake, to represent the band, he being too infirm to attend. So obviously it would have been a long travel for some of those older ones at this time period. Another family we have is the Shokon family from Chimnasing, Beausoleil First Nation. Like I've said throughout the presentation, most of my work has been on Beausoleil First Nation and the Chippewas of Lake Huron Simcoe, but throughout the years, I mean, digging through the archives, reading books, and finding a lot of different things, I've learned a little bit more about some of the other families within Georgian Bay, and the Shokon family was one of them. They had they weren't really present too much on too many documents. And to say that they're fish clan is just it's kind of hard. Within the top right here is it's only document that I've seen with them labeling some sort of clan beside their name. And just going off of other documents that I've seen with the different pike clans and catfish clans and some others, I would have to assume that this would be fish too as well. In the bottom right hand corner, we have the schedule of authorized land on Christian Island in 1869. I've shown parts of this document in the last two sessions. But what I like about this is it talks about Constance Shokon and how he was born at Giant's Tomb. So this would have been in about 1834-ish. So there's lots of stories and different views regarding Giant's Tomb in Southern Georgian Bay from the Huron, and as well as from the people at Chimnasing, and as well as Joseph Shokon being born at the Severn River 50 years prior. So in 1828, we had the transfer of Drummond Island, and it was ceded to the Americans. And this was something that was discussed years prior, but never really happened. With the old, they had a British post on the island too as well. But after 1815, the British were told to leave Fort Mackinac in that area. Captain Anderson, who was superintendent of the Indian Department at Drummond Island, was instructed to leave to Penetanguishene. So here's a couple maps blown up, shows a little bit about where Drummond Island is right here. And then another map I found in the archives, kind of giving a detailed description of the island itself. The reason why I'm showing this is that when Captain Anderson left, Drummond Island. He brought some Anishinaabe with him, and as well as some voyageurs. So after arriving at Patagonis, the government quickly made him superintendent over the Chippewas and Matchedash and Lake Simcoe. And the voyageurs and other Anishinaabe who followed him set up at different places around the area from Coldwater and Penetanguishene and so forth. That's where the post was, and there was still, not that many cabins in the area, so to speak, with settlers. So they're kind of making that, the voyagers were making that town of Penetanguishene at the time. Another excerpt I found in archives, it stated from Lieutenant Governor Colburn had instructed in his conveyance to Anderson that the Indians who formerly reside on Drummond Island will be induced perhaps to fix their abode at the Great Manitoulin or near Matchedash. The name of these Ojibwe people have been historically known as the Patagonis. The spelling varies with several documents. So one of the head chiefs of the Patagonisi was Peter Shagashi, or Pierre, as it's sometimes written. He was part of the Catholic faction that had come down, and he and Togwanina were instrumental in changing Assence's church, I guess you would say, from being a Methodist to becoming Catholic. So here are some of the different signatures and clan totems from Pierre Shagashi. I don't know exactly what species of fish this might be. It could be a sucker, but I'm not too sure. I haven't found any information. A lot of these documentations, a lot of documentation I see, like I said before, it doesn't usually have the name of the clan. So I don't want to assume anything unless there's family out there that still know this clan. So here we have the Holland's Landing muster roll. We have a Coldwater petition from August 1836, and this one here is the chiefs and headmen from the Chippewas, Lakes, Huron, and Simcoe were petitioning the government to get deeds for the land at this time period, and they were also wanting to have those 50-acre lots for their people up and down the road. But as we know, in November of that year, the treaty was made. And as well as a request for a priest in 1845, and then from the Bosley Island census in 1844, and again in 47. So it was in 48 that he had moved up to Manidominis with others from the Assens band. What I found in another section of the 30s and this time period was an interesting little document, and it states from Cabo. I don't know if this is John Cabo Gabo Jones or one of Shagashi's people, but it says, when the old man Solomon, who was about to take the land that we had cultivated at Wabashing, I told his son Henry Solomon that I was surprised at his father's doing so, patiently, as he had often told us we would be poor if we remained about Coldwater. When I told you this the other day, Anderson, you asked me if I had heard him say so, to which I answered I would not say so if I had not heard him. So it goes on in terms of there's a longer letter where they have grievances against Solomon, and he was an interpreter at this time period. He did come from up in Drummond too as well, and he was an interpreter during the War of 1812. And there was a few issues with him at this time period, and soon after this, he was forced to retire. One of the other chiefs at this time in Coldwater era in the 1830s, early 1830s, was Levi Shingwakons. And Levi Shingwakons was one of the chiefs that had sent a petition with the Reverend Jones, Peter Jones, when Jones went to England. And so the petition was at that time period to King William IV, who had just got in earlier that year. Some other documentation with him with his name on it was from a Coldwater School Report, as well as the debt list for traders. And then after he passed, we see his wife's name on some of these lists in the censuses and so forth. And then later on, Nancy Xinghua Kuntz, who stayed with the Assens band and was recorded in the band up until the late 1870s. I don't see anything on the 1891 census. And for Bosley First Nation, unlike many other First Nations, there isn't an 1881 census found on the First Nation. So I don't know if I've looked within the different townships in the area to see if they kind of amalgamated Bosley First Nation, the people from Bosley First Nation into that, but I haven't seen any names whatsoever. And then the bottom part there is Nancy Xinghua Kuntz in terms of the schedule of authorized lands on Christian Island. So here we have another letter from Anderson. He states the object of Xinghua Kuntz and Kabagabo, two chiefs, is to go with as many of them, their Methodist friends, as they can gain over to accompany them and settle in Big Bay, called on the map Owen Sound, a part of which appears to be in the township of Zero. The alleged cause for wishing to change their residence is what they conceive they cannot be happy situated so near the whites as at present. They are anxious to be convenient to a good fishing. So I wanted to move to a different area for fishing and stopped intercourse with the settlers. It also states it would have in the vicinity of Owen Sound. They also think the Indians who at present decline going from the settlement will be long will follow their example and ultimately form a large establishment there. 10 families have declared their intention to move in the spring on the opening of the navigation, and they inform me that it is the intention of the Snake tribe to accompany them. John Assens, with a part of his tribe, the Patagonis and the Yellowhead tribes, decline, or rather are opposed to it. So they didn't want to go, and Assens and Yellowhead didn't want them to leave too as well. And as we know, members of Chief Snake's band didn't want to go at this time period either. But later on, some of them had went in the 1840s. So in 1833, we have a letter from Anderson. He states information from Chief Assens. He said, a few days ago, we lost one of our chiefs who had some relation at Owen Sound, but he said before his death, he did not wish his situation filled up by any person from there. His wish was that one of the tribe here should fill his place. Father, I'm going to look out for a fit person to fill the place of the deceased and hope that the chiefs present intended for the dead chief will be given this to his successor. So this is when Assens was building up John Kabagabo Jones as becoming chief. Even prior to Levi Xinghua Kuntz's passing, I do see a couple documents with Kabagabo Jones on with Xinghua Kuntz as listed as a chief too, but he wasn't really raised up at that time period by the band. It's just almost like a headman position. So some more from Coldwater and Nottawasaga, and then later on at Nawash and at Colpoys Bay, we have Thomas Sky. When I was discussing a couple weeks ago about John Jones, Chief John Jones, when he passed away in 1852, in his will, he stated that his son Joseph was to be the chief, but being too young at that time period and going to the Almanac school, he was the chiefs had decided that Thomas Sky and John Smith would be the chiefs at replacing John Kabagabo Jones until Joseph Jones was fit. So here's some different Dodem marks from Thomas Sky. He was Ginoje Dodem or Pike clan. What relationship he has to some of those earlier Pike clan documents that I showed, I'm not too sure either. It's just a lot of documentation from that time period. It's few and far between, so to speak. But we do have Abram Sky too, which I do believe was Thomas's father. So some from the Narrows, again, the Holland's Landing muster roll, Big Bay petition 1844 regarding the chieftainship at Nawash, John Jones's salary increase in that petition too as well, or a later petition as being one of the junior chiefs he was stated, and an orator, and as well as another petition in 1844, 45, and then I remember what that list from Big Bay was. Yeah. Another family was the Crookshank family. They're also part of the Nottawasaga Bay people who lived in and around the Bend and remotely traveled through all different places in between. So we have Abram Crookshank, seen as another Isaac Crookshank, and in Holland's Landing muster roll under what was it, under the John Jones list, I guess you would say, or not, it was the Nottawasaga list. Sungua or something like that. And then later on it's spelled Sonagop. So in 1844, Chief Snake had stated to Anderson that the presents belonging to the family by the name of Crookshanks, who at the present are at Nottawasaga, I have sent them word sometime since that their presence was here and ready for them when they come for them. So whether or not the Crookshank family was on Chief Snake's band list, or just under his people, not too sure. I haven't seen anything to corroborate that. Maybe they just collected the presents at that time period for them. So here we have Chief Peter Sacco, another older chief at this time period. He did participate at Holland's Landing. He was the one selected by the people to become the chief at Nawash in 1844. And as well, you see that he was, it looks like Ginoje, Dodem. See the differences, I mean, within the bottom right, how it was just a couple lines as opposed to it being a little bit more fancier up top. And then some others with those spots that bike has. So from that 1844 petition, it states, John Jones writes, "We warriors have gathered this evening in council. We feel very anxious to have to make a, what is it? Sorry, my eyes are getting to me. Must be getting old. To have the man appointed whom we have chosen our chief by the name of Peter Sacco." So it just states that, I mean, they're getting ready to go down to Toronto to verify the decision from the band. And this on the bottom says Junior Chief John Jones. So both of them ended up going down, and they ended up giving the government the band's list of grievances that they had about Chief Walbon at this time period. So in the bottom here, we have an excerpt from the 1851 Derby Census, and it states Peter Sacco and his wife Jane Sacco, or Sacco, it's written, and as well underneath an Elizabeth Sacco, who is 90 years old. So I'm not sure if this might be Peter's mom or not. I mean, 10 years difference, but then again, every census is, I mean, it varies from time period to time period. And whether I think Jane at this time period was the wife, or the name of the wife of Keegadons, Peter Keegadons' mother. So within that petition that they end up sending to the government when they go down there, they talked about his origins, and it states he is descended from Wabamingo, and his name is Peter Sacco. So it gives a good description in terms of how long he's been at Big Bay. And I mean, he talks about they also talk about other things too with, and there's probably about a 8-page list. So another family from up in Saugeen Territory was it's called a Black family. I've seen this name on Rama list too as well, but I don't think they're connected. Just because this name I don't see. Well, from the Coldwater Narrow settlement, or from the Coldwater Narrow census in 1834 to the Nawash petitions and other information from the 1840s and 50s. The family came from Michigan, so I don't know. They might be, because I mean, some of those Bodeawatomis and others had come from Michigan as early as 1830. From what I have found out, and then other waves throughout the next 20 years. So here we have Moses Black, David Black, James Black. And what type of fish? I'm not too sure. It could be a trout, could be, I don't know. I would think that it would be pike because of James Black's image right there. But it varies, right? So again, from the Derby Census, we have Moses Black from Michigan. He was 75 years old at this time in 1851, and his wife Sarah, and some of their kids, and as well as David Black, who was 29, his wife Angelique, and their children. Another one up in Nawash area in Cape Croker, we have George Arthur or George Arthur Tobygon, and he was a chief. He became one of the sub-chiefs of Peter Keegan Jones in 1852. And it was at this time period again when the band were pretty frustrated with Peter Keegan, as well as Chief Wabatek's son, John Thomas Wabatek, and they wanted them both out. But only John Thomas stopped becoming chief for a short time period. So yeah, I see George Arthur Tobygon sign a lot of different documents throughout this time period, and as well as into the later 50s too as well. Some of these documents are signed with X's, not always with their clan marks, right? So these are very selected throughout several hundred documents in between. So I'm glad to share it. And it looks like he was Monomek or Catfish clan. Another one is John Mitchell, or spelled Misha or Michal. He came from Sheboygan. Also, the village was also called Shabewawagani, and he ended up becoming a counselor for the ones at Coalpoise Bay in the 1850s. And so here on the bottom, the Elliott family had sent in a petition. They wanted their annuities transferred. They had been at Nawash, Owen Sound for quite a few years since this time, and they just wanted to get their Jonia. And it was at this time that the government had seen a lot of people travel and go to different places in terms of what they wanted. They wanted everybody to settle at Manitoulin or in the Bruce Peninsula. So they didn't really understand how to do this in terms of taking money out of the general accounts of some First Nations and transferring it over. And there isn't really too much paperwork describing that. They just state that they do it, but within the accounting, it doesn't really show. And then as you know, with Treaty 45 and a half, and there was no amount of annuity that was set within that treaty. It was only years later that there was a decision to be able to give the people some Jonia every year after that. And I think it was 1,200 pounds yearly to be divvied up between the two bands, Saugeen and Nawash. I think they set a cap for per person. So whether they increase or not, I'm not too sure. I haven't seen that paperwork. And some miscellaneous fish clan come up around there from Son. We have an A. Cameron. This is the only document I've ever seen this person sign their clan on, or I've ever seen the name actually in any of the other petitions or lists. So I'm not too sure who he is. We have James Bebemosh as well, William Angus, Jacob Majawish, and John Toma. And some down here, Thomas Noggum and William Noggum and John Noggum. So some Ginoche, some Bodeawatomi. When I had seen this document, I thought I was trying to connect it to the Sandy family from Chimnasing, because there was some that were named their ancestors' name where it was Chinago. So whether that's that could be them or not, I'm not too sure. They arrived in the area about 1854, but they were on Christian Island too. But there's kind of a break after that to where I don't see their names, and then it's just their Anishinaabe name too. You don't see Thomas or William. Another interesting fellow was Muskenoji. Paul Kane. For those that don't know, Paul Kane was a Canadian artist who traveled all throughout Canada in the 1840s and early 50s. In 1845, he made a route right through to Matchedash and all the way over to Saugeen and then back again, and then went back down to Toronto, and then he made another voyage going up and then he came back, and then he carried on throughout the western provinces. So here we have Muskenoji, and I looked when I first seen this image from Paul Kane several years ago. For those that don't know, my background is mainly a fine artist, and I study art history. And when I seen this, I was like, oh, well, I wonder who this chief is. But I don't see him on any lists or any other documents stating, within petitions and treaties and so forth from the Saugeen area. So it kind of confused me. But through my research, I ended up tracking him down to the Thames, down in Delaware, and the Chippewa of the Thames down there, and see the name with Muskokomon's name and so forth. So I do believe he was just up there, and I think at this time period, I'm going to check to see if there's a date. He didn't really put down a date. I'm not too sure. I'll have to look in the book that he wrote, Paul Kane, Wanderings and Artists in Canada. I know that there was a couple big meetings in Saugeen at this time period, and I do remember seeing different documents from those other First Nations sending to Anderson and others requesting for money to be able to travel to go up there too as well. And it was in the summer of 45 that one of the major councils had happened at Saugeen. Another Anishinaabe was Manitowabi. Kane writes, I took the likeness of a chief named Manitowabi, or he devil. He was anxiously inquired what I wanted the likeness for. In order to induce him to sit, I told him that they were going home to his great mother, the queen. He said that he had often heard of her and was very desirous of seeing her, and that had the time and means, he would pay her a visit. It pleased him much that his second self would have an opportunity of seeing her. He told me with much pride that he had been a successful warrior and had taken 9 scalps in his warfare. So earlier I talked about those different Manitowabis. When I worked for the Bosley Band as the treaty historical researcher in 2015-16, I had the pleasure of sharing an office with our fire chief, Alan Manitowabi. For those that don't know Alan Manitowabi, he's a great knowledge carrier. He's a powerful powwow MC, as well as an old fancy dancer, and has done a lot of good for the Anishinaabek Nation throughout the last 40 years. So we've talked about this gentleman in the past. He's shared a lot of different history with me about his family from Wikwemekong and as well. And I talked to him last week too, and it was just a shot in the dark. He ended up calling me and by accident, but we ended up talking. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and we discussed this, and he even told me about some Manitowabis that he was told that were out in Minnesota too as well, and some other places that there's different graves out there with that name on there. So it was a very common name, I guess, back in the 1800s. So from that section, we have that Manitowabi signed the 1818 treaty. And then in the Coldwater Census, there's two different names. There's Captain John, and it says Manitowabi right beside it. And then under what's called, they state the pagan list, which was the names of a lot of those ones. They're often called the Big Lake Indians or even the Sandy Island or Shawnigan people. There's another Manitowabi under that name too in the same census. So I just took some information from that one that was at Rama, named Captain John. At one time it says Captain Joe, and it shows his son George Wasagijik, but I haven't traced the surname to that one either. So again, with the Manitowabi up in Sandy Island and Shawnigan, these are different names I've found with him. And from the 1852 annuity receipt, it almost looks like it could be a bear or a turtle. Again, it doesn't state beside the name what clan he was. But I'm sure some of those descendants from Wasauksing and Shawnigan might know. And just another fish clan signature from Rama too as well was from the Williams family. So it looks like Ginoje Dodem. So I was contacted by a lady last week or 2 weeks ago regarding the Moaishiwan family, and she had sent me a wonderful email today with lots of great information. I apologize for not getting back to you. I was trying to finish this thing up. I had a lot of work to clarify within this presentation, so my apologies. I'll get back to you tomorrow, but I love the information that you shared, and it was quite informative. From the Moaishiwan family, I didn't see too much early on. Later on in the 1860s, late 1850s, and into the 70s and 80s, that name is on a lot of their censuses. I do remember Chief Wayne stating in a video that he was Ginoje Dodem, and so there isn't too many fish clan that has been recognized on the 52 and 55 census, which are probably one of the best documents that have the different Dodem marks on it. But I did find this name Ogawan. I don't know if it was like short form for Pamajuan, but I don't see Pamajuan on the list. And then on the 1850 list after the treaty, Penetanguishene, I see what looks like a Pamajuan Kwe underneath. It says Ogawan, Ojuan, however they would pronounce that G. And then later on in 1856, I finally seen that Pamajuan name. So in 1871, I see that name again, Pamajuan Kwe, at 110 years old, and she's listed in the same house as Kekons, who was the wife of Chief Medwayash, another chief from Sandy Island, who was on that 1834 list. So I thought that was pretty neat. Maybe they were sisters. I'm not too sure, but they lived in the same dwelling, so to speak. Another family and another First Nation we haven't talked too much about was the Isaac family from from Mooster Point, Chinnasing, and there was some Isaacs all the way up in Henvey too. When I was going through this, I seen that name as early as 1834, and even prior within Coldwater under Yellowhead's band. Sometimes it's written John Isaac, sometimes it's Isaac John, and there was a Fish Clan beside it. I also found a marriage registration too from 1832 where it says Isaac John. I don't know if it says Sally or Celinda John. But later on, I see that name up in Henvey too as well within Chief Wickamatchee. And under that list of that chief, we have James and then Peter Isaac, and then looks like Mr. John Isaac. And then later, Anishinaabek census from 1881, we see that again with James Isaac. Whether these people are the same, I'm not too sure. I don't think so. I just wanted to throw that out there that, people have, the same names throughout time sometimes, and whether these ones from Rama are the same ones, relations up in Henvey, I'm not too sure. But I don't see the name Isaac on many lists later on, between 1845 and then the 1870s from Henvey. So it could be. But the other Isaac family from Moose Deer is I think a different lineage from those ones. Here we have one of my ancestors, my grandfather's grandfather, Thomas Isaac. He married Harriet Pewis, and it states that he was from he was born in Muncie. So at this time period, it was in 1900. It was stated as being 32 years old, and it shows his father's name James and his mother Jane, and Harriet's parents too as well, Elizabeth Mesheke, and as well as Peter Pewis. So within the death certificate, it did state that he was born in Muncie, and then and as well as shows the family from Christian Island, being on Christian Island in 1891. So I have Charles, Alice. It says older there. I don't know which sister it would have been. John too as well. And here John is younger than Thomas, Emily, Anna, Florence, and then their father James and mother Mary. So within the Anishinaabek and Moose Deer Point historical view, written by Franz Konecki, he states in there, apparently the Isaacs and Williams belong to the fish Doodemag, which is part of the water family. The elders I talked to agreed that their families had come from Wisconsin. The Williams had been known as Wagosh, and the Isaacs as Winnemuck or curly hair, but translated by Clifton in 1975 as catfish. They received their contemporary names when traveling in the Nottawasaga River area. Here they met a preacher by the name of Isaac Williams. It is unlikely that the man had much success in converting them, but he left the legacy of his name. I had checked up on this Isaac Williams in the past and haven't found too much on him, just so he's part of the Catholic Church. I still need to look a little bit more in terms of what he did within the area. I'm sure there's other books I'd be able to find. Over on to the left-hand side, we have the death certificate of James Aston, or John Isaac, sorry, showing his father. His name was James. He passed away in 1840, and he was 105 years old. So sometimes the time frames don't match up, right? I remember reading another history of Christian Island within one of the archaeological reports where Chief Leonard Meneg talked about a man being over 105 and that he lived on the other side of the island, so to speak, on the southwest side. So it could be him because that's where his homestead was. And another from Christian Island census in 1911, we have John and Elizabeth, and then Jane Isaac, Annie, Emily, and then down below we have Thomas Isaac, Harriet Isaac, and Claire Isaac, their daughter. So back in the 90s and 2000s, my auntie Edna, um, she lived with my grandfather, Nicholas Moaishiwan King, and she wrote a lot of his memoirs and a lot of great stories. She ended up putting together from his childhood to remembering a lot of different things from the little people to different people within the community, and as well as his family, his brothers and his sisters and so forth. So he talked about a little bit about Thomas Isaac, and then my auntie shares some pictures within that book too as well. It's a family book, so you're getting a treat here by seeing it. My grandpa goes on to talk about how, he wanted to be like his grandfather growing up. That him and his brothers had always worked with their hands and created violins and drums, and they would sing. And as well as, he talked about how Grandpa Thomas would go out for walks early in the morning. And when I read this, I thought this was neat because when I lived with my Mishomis up there in Christian Island in the 90s, he was always out walking, real early in the morning. And by the time I woke up, he'd be bringing back something he picked in the bush, which I thought was neat. Um, Very few times did I ever go out with him though. I guess he must have been too stubborn and didn't want to wake up when I was in my teens. But he also talked about how he wanted to be like his grandfather too as well, eh? And how he said, are you sure you want to be like me? And he said, yes, Grandpa. Says, then he made a motion with his hand reaching inside himself, cupped his hands and said, get ready. Said, I blinked my eyes and my grandfather tossed that magical part of himself into me. There, now you'll be like me. Never will you sleep in again. In fact, you were what you're going to do is get up early like me and travel many paths and go wherever your feet will carry you. I smiled proudly, my grandfather said, as I felt the rush that only a child could feel as he becomes like his hero. So I thought this was pretty neat because my grandfather ended up leaving Chimnasing. Like many people from Chimnasing, they would seek out work in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, and travel to different places like Clarkson or in southwestern Ontario and work on the farms and learn extra Jonia. And my grandfather did this too as well with his father, and ended up carrying on and coming back and meeting my grandmother, and then going back down to Clarkson and carrying on down to Jordan and as well as into St. Catharines where I was born. So I thought this was a pretty neat little story that I share. I just want to share it with you. And then of course you've got all the relations over on the side, Uncle John and Grandpa Thomas, and as well as his father Simpson holding him, and his sister Gladys, Wilson Isaac, and Wilson's son Jimmy, and my Chinook Miss Clara, as well as some other aunties. So here we have another picture of the Isaac brothers. I wonder if this was, on a lot that my grandfather had his home built and where my aunts and uncles live right now. This was about circa 1840. I noticed that the names had changed from Thomas to Charlie. If anybody knows my Mishomis or knew my Mishomis, you would know that he looks like what's written here, Charlie, but we know that his grandfather was Thomas. So I think whoever made this was switched the names around. It's just something I found on the internet. And it shows the different clans in that document as well at Mooster Point. King family under Migaze, Williams under Neme, Sandy under Makwa, and Isaac under the Maven. So it would be us. They would have been part of that Sucker clan. In 1899, there was the survey was done on Chimnasing too as well. And what's good about this document, and it was found in an archaeological report too as well that I mentioned previously, that it labeled out the different plots of land that people had lived at and owned. So over on to the left side there, you see John Isaac's little lot, and I've blown it up over here. So hearing different stories of some of the relatives, some of my father's cousins and so forth, they always used to go down to that property when they were younger, because after John had passed away, a lot of things got overgrown, but things were still growing. He had a farm down there, he had apples growing, he had grapes and so forth. So there was lots of good things, and they would make the venture to walk, and it's about a half-hour walk from the village. I know I've walked it many times. So they would always say that place was called Moaishiwan. Uh, so whether that was his Anishinaabe name, I'm not too sure. Um, but we think it is. I was talking with another elder the other day in terms of trying to get a translation. I talked to quite a few. There's some that said it sounds like somebody's lying next to you, and then another one says it sounds like they're over top of you. So what I think is that um, you see two houses within the bottom corner there. I think that one of those houses would have been Thomas Isaac's house too as well. There's a whole footpath up here too, and my grandpa had stated that there was the Isaacs had and other Bodeawatomi families had a graveyard up here at one time, and then this area right here it says where Charles, James, and Williams King lots is. That's where our traditional burial grounds is today, and there's houses that have been built up all around there. So I just want to share a little information about them. We have the Williams family too, from Moose Deer. I hadn't found too much in the censuses early on about Moose Deer, but within that relation, going back to Muncie within the Isaac family, I did find some censuses from down there back in 1871 and 1881. I'm not too sure if this is the same Williams family or not. The names are kind of all jumbled up together with those Anishinaabek and those Oneida too as well that are down there. I see some Cornelius's in the list and other families from Muncie. So it could be. I just wanted to show that. I haven't done too much on this family, and I haven't found too much either. So moving on from Gigo and Dodem, we're going to move into some tree clan, Matig Dodem or Wigwas or Matigamish or White Oak and Birch. Some of the early ones from the Chippewas of Lakes Huron and Simcoe. I'm going to show first. We have Chief Walbon, who was there was only a few documents I found with his name on there and him being listed as a chief. I'm sure that he had some pull as a headman. And was instrumental within all the bands at that time period living at Coldwater. He did sign pre-Confederate Treaty number 48, also known as the Coldwater Surrender. And then we have down here, we have, says Walbon Young. And then his wife, Anna, in terms of his marriage registry. I said, okay, we found a last name. Maybe he's George Young. But I see that name George Young on a lot of different censuses in the past, as well as petitions. So as I looked further and then looked into this marriage registry, I found there was a George Young who got married at the same time. So cross that out being the same person. So perhaps it was father and son. Now, George Young signed many documents and he always signed with his clan. Whether this was Birch or Oak, it doesn't state. Possibly could be either one because a lot of some of the Birch Bark clan was north of Rama, and then some of the Oak clan was to the east of Rama. So whether or not it's Oak or Birch, I'm not too sure, but still Matig. And this is a lot of documents he signed. He signed pre-Confederate Treaty number 66, as well as pre-Confederate Treaty number 76, which was the Islands Treaty in Georgian Bay, as well as there was a land claim petition too in 1850 from the headmen and chiefs of the Chippewas and Lakes Huron and Simcoe regarding lands in the Muskoka area, as well as different other CTC petitions and numerical returns. So he was on a lot of documents. He wasn't really recognized as a headman or a chief until the mid 1840s to late 1840s. I've seen his name on different petitions from 1844 against Yellowhead, but there was no tree clan written beside his names. Most of those ones were just with an X. But I thought it was pretty neat. It's the largest collection of tree clan I've seen, but I'm sure there's more out there. Another one from Rama, Neshko, Neshkoise, I think. Couldn't find a translation for this one, but he did sign with that Tree Clan back in the 1830s. I don't see his name anywhere else after this. And he did sign that document authorizing Thomas Nanagishkung to be their attorney and headman to speak on behalf of the bands to the government regarding many different issues. Ishkeose, I think. So here we have Asa Noakagijik. Asa Noakagijik was part of different bands throughout his lifetime, part of the Assens band, part of the Sandy Island band, part of the Muskoka band at Port Carling, and so forth. I see him as early as the Coldwater School Report in 1832, and moving on to the debt list to the narrow census in 1834. It isn't until 1855 that I see clan signature. And I think that's one of the only ones I did find from Mason Noakagijik. But his marriage registry was listed, and he married Mary Abitung. There's lots on this guy. So he had a claim to the chieftainship of the Muskokas after Chief Migas had passed away. He said he was the rightful heir, and that he wanted to get the medal. I mean, Alan Corbier talked about this within his clan presentation a few years back, but I've seen different documents, different copies, as well as other copies, not really the originals, just correspondence pretty much from his claims of moving forward by Bartlett to the department. So it gives a little bit of history more in terms of the Birch Bark clan and the reindeer, Dick Dodem, and Becca McGobble too as well. Now in Franz Konecki's work regarding the history of Perry Island, he states that Chief Migas was part of the Birch Bark clan, but like I said last week, I never seen him sign with anything like that. And he was, Becca McGobble was Migas's brother, who held that position as chief after Migas's passing. I found another document within what's called the Sinclair Reports in 1915 and prior to the Williams Treaty. And Peter Meneg gives a good description. He states that about the year 1870, the year of 1876, 39 or 40 years ago, I made my first hunting trip in the territory referred to, accompanied by my uncle, the late Mr. Asa Wasuni, who had a limit of his own and was also a member of our band. And upon his death, he gave the said limit to one of his grandchildren, namely James Copagog, who was only a baby boy at the death of the above mentioned old hunter. The baby boy being the only one closely related to him when he died. Said limit was located in the township of Monteith in the Perry Sound district, where a lake is lying, called in the Indian name Kakaquabequang. So I looked up where Monteith, where the township of Monteith was. I never heard of it. I guess it's known as McMurrick now. And later on within Peter Meneg's testimony, the relationship there in terms of him being his uncle, I'm not too sure. I think as he's just stating that, maybe because I don't see, it could be through the Potawatomi connection. And when Asa had a son named Abram too as well, who also went by Noakagijik. So this might be Abram too. I'm not too sure. But I think Asa Noakagijik had passed away. Well, no, not at this time. In 1876, he was still alive. So he goes on and talks about the route that they took, which I thought was pretty neat because I see a lot of documents like this over time. When you talk about going into our hunting territories, and hopefully I'll be able to do a presentation on that to show how our people went through the land and went to those places and had different camps all over. So later on, he talks about going up to up Georgian Bay coast from Bosley Island and then hitting the trail at Blackstone Lake and carrying on from there. And he says They went to the north end of Lake Joseph, and from there to Trout Lake and Turtle Lake, and to Maple Lake, and on down. We follow the lakes northward till we strike the large river now called Zeaguin River. And from there, we follow the said river upwards till we come to the branch coming down from the southward. From thence we follow the said branch till we come to the mouth of or inlet of Lake Kakaquab and Begong, where we had our regular camping grounds. The trip takes about 10 days on the trail from our home at Bosley Island. So you get a good idea of how long it took. I mean, let alone where they had to go and what they had seen along the way. But when I looked on Google Maps and I tried to track this route down, it's I ended up following Trout River and Lake St. Joseph's, and ended up seeing the Zeaguin going all the way up through here. And then on the second last tributary before it ends, it goes south and down to an inlet right here. So when I blew it up some more, that inlet goes right into what's now known as Horn Lake. And this has been something I've done over the years. I've seen Anishinaabe place names. I try to track down what it's called now. So I can kind of put two and two together for our people to try to understand that. And always, within some of these recordings, it's never correct. I've sat down with our elders trying to find place names at different places within the Muskokas and other places, and the whole name changes in terms of what was written and what they think it is, right? So you never know. But I think this could be it in terms of what they were talking about. So moving on with Asa Nawakagijik, he was on the Bosley Island Census 1845 and 47. And then again, kind of right around treaty time, he was part of the Muskoka band. Sandy, he was on the Sandy Island Annuity. His name was on the Sandy Island Annuity seat in 52 and as well as 55. And then after that petition with the government wanting to become the head chief of the Muskoka band, he ended up leaving them and going back to Chimnasing. So I started seeing him on records in 1860 and different petitions or being a witness to different council proceedings or different letters being signed by those chiefs. And then he stays at Chimnasing from then on. So there's different stories. He traveled lots like all our people. But then again, we have both himself and his son at Chimnasing in 1869, showing their wives' names and where they were born. It says Abram Nawakagijik was born at Pigeon Lake. So again, goes to show they went east a little bit every now and then. And as well as Asa Nawakagijik being born at Bosley Island, 50 years prior to this, right? So it goes to show you, when the Treaty 48 happened, the Coldwater Treaty, not everybody decided to go and live at Bosley Island from the Assens Band. There was people that were living there and utilizing that place as a fishing station and trading hub for many, many years prior to that treaty. So, often people get on some committees here and there and they think everything happened at that time after the treaty that the Assens Band, started to occupy it, but happened years before. So, yeah. So up here, Reverend Salt states in 1875 in his diary from Chimnasing, says, many of the Indians left today to their fall fishing. Asa Bodeawatomi desired that his surname should be Moaishiwan instead of Bodeawatomi. Now, this is the first time I ever seen it written that way. Now, I know that Moaishiwan or Wasuni, some pronounce it. There's a Wasuni Island, and that there was Chief Wasuni that's buried there. Whether this is Asa Nawakagijik or his father, not too sure. I haven't figured that one out. But he does change his name, and then that's what we've seen in the Peter Beneg document too as well. I know my cousins up in Perry Island, Verna and their daughter. They have a lot of information regarding this gentleman, and they've shared lots in the past with me. which I didn't show in this presentation. I forgot about those documents. Sorry, Chris. Moving on within the Ascents band, we have Peter York. And this is the only tree clan I've seen signed with the actual type species of tree, which states oak, as is Doodem. Peter York lived at different places throughout his life. He was born at Lake Scugog. He was part of the Snake Island band for many years, and then he ended up traveling out over to Colpoys Bay in the 1850s and becoming a counselor out there too. There are some of his documents. Only one document I've seen him with the tree clan. But in another thesis by Rebecca Liu, she writes a little bit about Thornbury. And in here she says, prior to the European settlement, Thornbury was inhabited by a group of Beaver Indians whose presence contributed to shaping the cultural and physical history of the town. In fact, Highway 26 likely originated as a trail used by the Petun, Bodeawatomi, and Huron Indians as a trading route to the Bruce Peninsula and Lake Huron. And there existed, in circa 1833, there existed 2 villages in Thornbury on the western edge of the town. Many Indians camped in Thornbury during the summer, and perhaps one of the most noteworthy figures of the clan was a Chippewa Indian who came to Thornbury around 1880. His name was Peter York, and he camped at places along the Georgian Bay shore between Meaford and Collingwood, and in the Beaver Valley, living by selling whatever he could, using usually handicrafts in his own making. His winter home was a humble cabin located on the shore near the Thornbury Harbor, and when his generation passed away, so did the Indian presence in the community. Peter York was a dear member of the community, and a fellow resident named Dr. Moore wrote the following verses in his honor. To friendships true and honor strong, he moved with dignity among the friendly folk of fam and town, the various castes of white and brown. His rustic cabin, night and day, was home to all who passed his way. To him, if kindness once were given, it sealed a bond in sight of heaven. So I thought that was pretty nice. I found that a few years back. Thought I'd share that with you. There were different Peter Yorks too as well. So I've had this discussion and some other Yorks over at Rama, Jonathan York, and those ones they had a lot of stories written down about many different things, Nanabojo stories and other stories within the wars with the Nodway and so forth. Good stuff. Some other miscellaneous tree clans, that of John Beatty from Colpoys Bay in 1852, Bodeawatomi from Nawash, and as well as Peter, looks like it says Toronto, but I've never seen this name anywhere else but this petition, so I don't know who it could be. John Beatty was another character on another hand. He was originally from Snake Island area, part of Chief Snake's band, and then was up in Rama, and then had come across to Colpoys Bay. They say he was one of the ones who represented Colpoys Bay in Treaty 72 in 1854. There was nobody from that part took in those treaty discussions except for Mr. John Beatty. He was well versed in English language too as well. So history tells us. All right, on to the bird clan. Like I've shown in a lot of different slides, all of the artwork is my artwork, so I thought I'd give a chance to share some of the work I've done in the past. So me being of Mi'kmaq Doodem, I thought I'd share this one too, and moving forward with some of those other bird clans. And I thought we'd start off with Medwayash, not the Medwayash from Saugeen, but one from Muskoka territories. As I stated, I know a couple members of the family had contacted me within the last couple weeks, so we're going to talk a little bit about this. I didn't find too much in the archive, so to speak, within my records on him, But I did find a lot of information within Franz Konecki's work on Perry Island, the history of Perry Island. So a lot of this information is from there. His wife's name was Kay Kontz. And in the 1834 Coldwater Narrow Census, it shows that he's got 5 people living under him with his wife. So he's got 3 children, 3 boys, and stated that he was the chief of the Isle of Sable, or Sandy Island. Was also known as Nisnowanini, or a brave warrior, and he fought in the War of 1812. Also within that collection of documents by Konecki, it said that he had come from the North Shore and had come down and settled at Sandy Island after the war. His wife's name was Kate Kontz. His oldest son's name was Bodeawatomi, or also known as those little thunders off in the distance in the west. Within Konecki's work, he stated that his name was, he had another name too. I think it was what we call a rattle, Shishigwen, spelled differently here, but I did find that name within the 55 census, and it looks like it's either a crane clan, or a goose. Later within Konecki's work, he states that Medwayash had another son named Shugdub, or Sugdub, also known as Andrew Sugdub, and he did sign the 52 annuity receipt too with another bird clan. So moving forward, we have more information on Chishi Gwen, or Pubamuetang, and his wife's name was Annie, and their children were Charles Sinaba, Samson Chicha Kontz, Thomas Medwayash, or Pubamuetang, and Maria Teresa Kabanokwe. Please mind my Anishinaabe. I'm not a fluent speaker. I'm always learning, and it's a little bit different than speaking than actually reading it in my head and pronouncing it in my head. So I apologize if I'm getting these names wrong. I'm sure my Auntie Gloria, if she's watching, she's probably just laughing at me and correcting me as usual. But this is some of the information that I found on the family. Different censuses from Perry Island in 1871, as well as 1881, give a little bit more. In terms of his first name, Peter, and some of his children. It didn't give a wife's name, but got Chicha Kontz on there, and some other children too as well. And then his brother says Sugaduf in this one. But then it gives a little bit more in terms of Julia and his daughters, and as well as his other children, or his other brothers. So yeah, a little bit more. Thomas and Charles and Samson Chicha Kontz. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know if any of the families know this, or if they have a little bit more history on it up in Massaxing. I'm sure they do, or what clans they go by now. But that name Chicha Kontz still thrives. I know there's a counselor over there by the name of that. That's a little bit of what I found on the Medwayash family. I wish I had a little bit more time to do some more research. Hopefully in the future I can. And there was one brother that wasn't named, so I wonder who that one was. I mean, in terms of connection to Alex Medwayash, because within the documents prior to Treaty 45 and a half, we have that Alex Medwayash traveling with the Reverend Peter Jones and other members of the church and Nassance family going over there. So I'm thinking, okay, well, if he's traveling there with Thomas Big Canoe and everybody else, like if he was the chief there, shouldn't he already be there? I don't know. That's just, I'm thinking out the box, right? So here we're moving on to my family and the descendants of Moaishiwan, or sometimes spelled Ogamoach. I found these early documents from 1835 from Captain Anderson in correspondence to Colonel Gibbons, talking about how Anderson had just returned from Sault Ste. Marie, and while he was there, he found 115 or 215 Indians from the neighborhood of Milwaukee and Lake Michigan, who were a mixture of Chippewas and Potawatomis, and whose land they say the Americans have taken possession of, and they now come in to reside and seek the protection within the limits of within the British area, I guess you would say. And it's saying many of them served the government during the late war. So they're talking about the War of 1812, which I thought was pretty interesting. I said, okay, because a lot of the information I asked people, they said, oh, well, we were on Christian Island, and our families were on Christian Island at the beginning of the 1830s, and I heard different things over time. So, like I said before, a lot of this work has started with an investigation of my family, and it carried out and branched out to everybody else, because it seemed like we're all connected within different families, so it helped out a little bit. So within Jarvis's reply, he states, in reply to your letter on the 16th instant, I'm directed by the Lieutenant Governor to request you that the Indians you refer to may remain under our protection and have land assigned to them, but that they have no funds at the disposal of the government to enable them to cultivate it or to furnish them with cattle. You'll have the goodness to state where you would recommend them to be located. So, yay, they gave us permission. Our people have been living all over the Great Lakes for hundreds and thousands of years. But that promise was always there as allies, you know what I mean, that they would protect and help and continue on through that kinship, I guess you would say. Then later we would know they would stop that. So I was like, okay, well, where'd they come from? Everybody always says, oh, they came from Wisconsin. Well, we're in Wisconsin. So I continued to do my research, and I mean, about 2012, 13, 14, trying to find some more information. And I found some different works that my brother had found through the non-treaty claims from Chimnasing and Wasauksing in about 1812 or 1912 to 1916. But I also did find some other information from the Allen Salt diary, and he states, I baptized Mary Jane, daughter of Abi and among the Wabanokwe, both deceased, born at Shabewawagoning, age 60 years, since born in 1831. So it gave a village in terms of where the Abi family came from. So when I went back and looked into the 300 pages of the non-treaty Indian files and in the applications, I came across Mary Jane King, who was an Abi as well. And she states, I, Mrs. Lewis King, daughter of the late Abi, do solemnly declare that I was born at Shabewawagoning in the state of Wisconsin, USA, and I am on my 85th year, and we came across the border 2 years after Chief Ogamawaj left the aforesaid and came to the country 2 years later. So it just connects the dots in terms of where Ogamawaj was living at prior to coming across. Some more information I had found out from contacting the museum over there in Sheboygan. I had some files sent to me from the curator there, and in the book, the Historic Sheboygan County, it states from Gustav Buchan, Dr. Alphonse Duran reports that Joe Wisconsin, an old Indian, nearly 90 years of age, who was born on the banks of the Sheboygan River near the present site of Sheboygan Falls, told him through an interpreter that the original term was Shabwawagoning and meant through the drumming or going through the drumming. Dr. Duran also reports that an interview with another Indian, 85 years old, named John Navi, stated that the original word was Shabwawakum and meant a noise that goes through you that was heard at the mouth of the Sheboygan River. There's other interpretations within this book too as well. It talks about how they hear the sound of the drumming from underneath, like the river is underneath the ground and they can hear it through coming up through that too as well, almost like thunder, and then a few more. But here's an idea of where Sheboygan is and whereabouts. Um, a lot of those ones that had come from the area of Milwaukee all the way down to Chicago and even around on the other side of Michigan too as well. And I settled at Saugeen and Walpole, Sarnia. I think there's we got about probably almost every First Nation and Anishinaabek Nation had those relatives come and be adopted into those bands. So when I found this information, I had contacted the late Shungo Spa, Stuart King, and he stated to me in a message that that Ogumawash's father had come from the village of Meshquanung. So this book that he talked about within this message, I had already had it, and read it and didn't find Moaishiwan or any of the relatives of the King family within this book. And a lot hasn't been written on them in the past in terms of their contribution in the War of 1812 and other things they have done. But he states what I thought was cool within this. He talks about in our culture, the Squaziwan is the gift of the Western doorway. It is the strength of the unknown, black, that sustains us. It is creator. Meshquanung, known today as Algoma, Wisconsin, was Musquaziwan's village. This is noted in Helen Tanner's book, Atlas of Great Lakes Indian History. So I don't know if he meant it was just a village, or because I haven't found anything on Squaziwan. But nevertheless, for those that don't know Stuart was one of our family historians, tremendous knowledge keeper who showed a lot to the community and other places and businesses and corporations and committees and things like that. He was one of the ones to talk to who carried that information and shared with many relatives. So Miigwech Stuart. Again, along the side, you see all the different villages along the west coast of Lake Michigan. So Meshquanung is just kind of northeast of Green Bay, and then Kitticaw, Nenebojo, Wampum. So these are from listed from 1830 in Hornbeck's book. Here's another map showing the migration of the Bodeawatomi people. Different routes that were taken along the Old Sauk Road, crossing from Lake Michigan over to Lake Huron, and as well as the canoe routes going up and down and all around. There was some that even went around the bottom part, as we'll talk a little bit later about, from Chicago and going up to Muskegon and as well as to Traverse and heading up. So, and then I show Drummond Island. It doesn't, within the correspondence from Anderson, a lot of them probably met up with Anderson at St. Marie for presents or other gifts at that time period. So here we have a small tree of Ogumawash's family and some of the stuff that I found over the years, many different censuses, many different family lists, and as well as marriage certificates and so forth. So we have Ogumama Squazian. Never found the name of his wife, as well as the second generation Ogumawatch and Quashmagokwe. Biography I just wrote on him. I put his date of birth circa 1872 from different information from a collection of affidavits, but I found a census from 1871 with what is Mary King on there and John King, her son, and she says that she was a widow. So I just changed it to 1871. So in around that time period, he had passed away. A lot of things happened after that authorized schedule of land at Chimnasing in 1869, and even prior to that. Within those affidavits, our people had talked how the Bodeawatomis under Ogumawatch and others were asked to go and hold the island, Christian Island, and that they were given half the island by John Assens Jr. And then when everybody started to migrate over in the late 1850s and 60s, they had protested against it. And so the land that they had cleared up the hill was kind of usurped, so to speak. And then more in the documents, they talk about how the southwest corner was given to them. So all the area where all the cottages are going towards the lighthouse and so forth. And history within the family always says, I mean, that's the Bodeawatomi side. And we know there's those old ones that are buried in some of those lots up the hill, and as well as within the cemetery now, the traditional cemetery there. And my brother and I have found some of these spots in the past, so hopefully we'll be able to bring some of our relatives from Moose Deer and Ramo over who know who've got that power, and that knowledge that can share, and can confirm, because we see different stone markings, so to speak. We see designs in circles, and we see stones lifted up and so forth, and we see remnants of fiber from the old houses that they would built on there. And as well as testimony from my own Mishomis, I mean, talking about, before he passed, he said that, I mean, when they start building houses up there, they're going to find the graves of our relatives. So, I mean, I brought this forward many times. I'm always concerned when they're continuing building homes and everything else, right? So there's lots of things left unsaid, and especially that area too, because we have another cousin who lives up there, and there's always those stories of hearing the drums being heard up in the bush, but there's nobody around, and as well as a great bundle that is buried along the ridge somewhere, but we'll keep that buried. So here we, just for reference for those ones that want to, see some of their ancestors, some of the dates I've been able to find, who they married, some of the names. This list is extensive. This is just one portion. I've seen one list that's like 26 pages long. Even my direct line from Owanquit or George King, that list is long. I think I've got that list at 20 pages, and I'm not even done. So this is something hopefully I can get with the rest of the families that live all in around Southern Georgian Bay, and those ones that are interested in doing genealogy, and we can kind of complete this tree, because it just can't be one person. As we see over time, it's been many different people. So, wow. So when we talk about when they came, they stayed at Coldwater. One of the earliest discussions from that was incident with a Mr. Tate at Coldwater over a broken pipe, broken windows. He wanted some deer from the Bodeawatomi people, and he stated that the village was situated about within 1 mile from his house. So I'm still trying to track down where that village might have been. After Coldwater, they were at the Severn River and all points in between, as the Reverend Frederick O'Meara states. He states, a very wandering band, scarcely 2 months together in one place, much demoralized by intercourse with whites, and state, or still in a heathen state. So here he's talking about Penikawning, or Potato Island. And I did the math in terms of how many miles it is away from his starting point up on the North Shore. So as we see where you see the star right in there, that's just a little island right here. And so it's blown up right here. So they were at Bosley Island too for a time period. They were all over the place, Christian Island, everywhere. They were out here in Sturgeon River and up in Hog Bay and a point here. If, like, for those ones that go over their genealogy within the area, you see that, your families and your ancestors have been born at many different places over time. That's due to, the fall harvest and the fishing and the hunting and everything else, right? They had those spots where they always traveled. And, those spots that they had stayed, if they had passed away along those routes. So again, another chop shot at the different places that Okoumouash and Potawatomi and Dawa people had lived and moved to, from Christian Island to Bosley Island to Wasauksing to Moose Deer Point and so forth. And some more on Okoumouash in terms of his participation in the War of 1812. That document I had found, it was made years later in 1847. Alan Salt talks about how he made this list. But it doesn't have his name on this list. He talks later in his journals, assuming when the Queen dies, that he had made the list for the people who had fought at Detroit and Chrysler's Farm in Chateauguay. This is one of the medals that Ogamosh received, and it's held within the family. And up here on the right, it shows the list of delegates from Christian Island in 1860 going. So some more bird clan we have from Nawash and around. Some of these families I didn't really want to get into too much. I don't know too much about them, or even if they're still around. So we have Thomas Masheke. This says bird, as well as I'm not sure what the Alcos, Abos Tutney, Robert Wabakwe, and then Richards. I wonder if this would be the Ritchie family, because they were a Bodeawatomi too as well. We have Abram Nawach and Patagonis down in the right hand corner. It looks like we have that go them, right? So it could be Mrs. Say as well, or I mean, talking with Dr. Corbier earlier in the week. I mean, it could be a few other things. So it's hard to tell when there's nothing written, right? So the top corner, it looks like it could be a crane. Top left corner, I mean, it's stated that, I mean, those ones that sign with the eagle, that there's at most times it had that hook beak, so forth. So different stuff. So moving on, I'm sure in a lot of different communities, even within what we talked about, the Moaishiwan family, and as well as others, I mean, those families hold that knowledge where they know their clan, even though it wasn't ever written down or marked on paper. They know their clan, and like within Assen's band and surrounding territories, a lot of the Bodeawatomi people and the Dawa people that had come, they weren't seen as given the right to be able to sign their names on treaties, because it's still like they were adopted. It wasn't their land, so to speak. So that's why we don't see it. After all my years of research and, I mean, my ancestors, it wasn't until what year is it now? 2016. I mean, I get lost sometimes. It wasn't until 2016 that I actually found Ogamowage's clan Dodem on a document, and that's the only one I've ever found. I've got quite a few documents with his name on it, from different petitions to speeches and lists and so forth. And it's spelled differently every time, but I've only found one. And I know that some of the King family go by Makwado them too as well, or Mako. And I've heard different stories about that too. If they want to go by that, that's fine too as well. That's their business. I just know that that clan, I mean, had come to the family, and it's come many different ways through ceremony and it's been documented too as well. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the Mixmong family from Chimnasing and other places too as well. The earliest document I see that name is from 1854, and it's spelled Michimong. And on this list, Anderson states that they were Chippewas from Lake Michigan, and Potawatomis was crossed out. But later on in different censuses, we see these families that had come in 1854 being listed as Dawa people from Michigan and Wisconsin, like these ones. So we have Migisamong, it's written, Mixamong, Michimong, and so forth. In 1912, we had a non-treaty application by Joseph Mixamong, and he talked a little bit about his family. There was a lot of documents from Sandy family, King family, Abbey family, Nanabush family, and so forth, right? Sunday family that had been living off the fat of the land, so to speak, who weren't receiving annuities from the Assens band, even though they were adopted years prior, and were wanting to be put on the list and help with their livelihood. So they, Henry Jackson had ended up gathering them all together and was named kind of the head man to move this forward within the band. So he got different applications ready with the government and with his lawyers, and carried on and pushed this forward. So in 1911, 1912, there was a number of documents and affidavits written by the family. So Joseph Mixamong was one of them, and he gave the name of his parents and grandparents and where they were from. He said his father's name was Peter Mixamong, mother name was Sarah Mixamong. They were born in, his father was born in Michigan, his mother was born in Wisconsin, and as well as the wife's, says wife's mother and father, says the mother was Gichinago or Chinago, father was Migisamong, and down there I think it says they were born at Cat's Head, Michigan. I didn't know where that was. I'm like, okay, where's Cat's Head? Well, I did a little bit more investigation, a little bit more within the family. When I first moved to Chimnasing, like I said earlier in the previous sessions, I wasn't raised on Christian Island, but I did move up there in the mid '90s, and I mean, one of the main families there, and a cousin of my father, Elijah Mixamong, and my cousins there, and Kay. They welcome me with open arms, and I treat them as such as aunties and uncles, and I'll never forget the hospitality they gave to me when I first moved to the island and lived with my Mishomis back in 1996. So miigwech. So here we have the names of his Joseph's brothers and sisters: Elijah Mixamong, Miss Jack Clausen King, and Mrs. Alex Assens. Shows the death of his father. So these information is really good for the families, for those that haven't seen it, right? So states his mother's, Joseph's mother's father was Waganaba, I don't know, Waganaba, could be Chinago as well. So again, within that family, I still want to visit with the family. Hopefully we can do it over Zoom and go over some of the finances. Just a small portion of the family that I was able to find, or I was able to put within the slideshow. There's more under it in terms of Elijah's family and so forth within Johnny Mixamong and the rest that lead up to today. Some of the family members I have given the document to, so hopefully they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I still want to go over the documents I have found in previous years from different marriage registries and certificates, death certificates, and so forth, just to show them and hopefully help create a book, because they were so kind to me and have been kind to me throughout my life. It's something I want to give back to the family. And I know that the family has been hurting with the loss of many members over the last couple of years, but this is something to help out with. So we had Mixamong up top, the Bonakwe, and then I only have one son, Peter Mixamong. I'm sure there's other daughters though that as discussed earlier. Peter Mixamong married Sarah. Sometimes it was Mary on some documents, and even with Peter Mixamong, sometimes it's Pierre, John, Elijah. It changes throughout documents, but still meaning the same person. Married in the Sandy family, and then Elijah Mixamong married Mary King. So that's and then we have Joseph Mixamong marrying Amelia Meneg. It doesn't show that he's married on the application though. Doesn't have her name, or did it? Then Charlotte Mixamong and Opta married Jack King. Another family that hadn't been documented was the Squattis family or the Jameson family from Chimnasing. I know they go by Mong, Dodem. I did find some information and had done their tree as well when I was doing the Tobygon family tree. So we can do that and go over that stuff here in the near future and try to finish some of that off or can make corrections and so forth. I just like doing some of these things. It just helps with the family. I know when I started, it was hard for me to do. A lot of it was word of mouth or oral information. But once I got into a little bit more, I said, "Wow, this is pretty neat." So I kept keeping on, I guess you would say. But moving on with the Jameson family, what I've kind of looked over was the record from the Methodist Church for Harry Musquatus. The connection between Musquatus from the Coldwater Narrows census in it should be 1834, not 43. Must be my dyslexia kicking in. But I haven't found a connection between Harry Musquatus and this Musquatus from that list from the Muskoka faction. In the Methodist Church record, the Reverend Alan Salt had brought him into the church, and it says his father is Nawaquense. So I went back this afternoon looking in different censuses and trying to find that name Nawaquense in anything, and I couldn't find it. I think it's a misinterpretation of the name Musquatus. And it states that they resided at the Nushkaldayance River. Some say Niskoot today, I guess, Niskoot River, but that was their original Anishinaabe name. And then going back to Nawaquense, the only thing I found within the Sandy Island and Shawnigan census was Kudakens, but I don't think that's the same person. Just wanted to show it for kicks, I guess. So within that family, part of that list, I mean, within those trees, I mean, I've got every different name and every different time period with it cited. Whether it was a marriage certificate, death certificate, census, and names change all the time. As I said before, dates change all the time, so forth. So we have that Nawaquense or Musquatus. I do believe it's Musquatus. With Harry Musquatus, I don't know of any other brothers or sisters. Within the 34 census, it was just Musquatus. But then again, within this listing of what I found, Harry Musquatus was born two years later after that census in 1836. So he married Marianne Tobygon, and their children were Lucy, Moses, Simpson sometimes. There was a Job in one of the censuses. Also Eliza Musquatus, who married Adam Pawis. And it's interesting, in the Salt Diaries, I mean, he goes up to Shawnigan or the Shawnigan Gardens, and he goes to the French River, and he has his guides with him, usually David Hawk or somebody else, part of the church, and he talked about Adam Pawis having two wives, and every time that he went up there, he told him that he couldn't have two wives, that he was living in sin. And he talked about Adam Pawis having one of the biggest houses at Shawnigan, and as well as having another wife somewhere else. And every time that the Reverend Salt came up to see him, he said, "Yeah, I hear you. It's bad. I'm living in sin. I won't do it. I'll get rid of one and only have one wife." And so this is repeated a couple of times as Salt continues to go up over the years, right? So I don't know if this Eliza was a second wife or not, but it's pretty interesting to read. It's a long read too. Nancy as well, Nancy Musquatus, as well as Sophia, Susan Musquatus, and then at the bottom, the youngest one was William, or sometimes written Jameson Musquatus, and married Hannah Paul or Pomasagay. And those are the ones from Chinnesing, from Sam. Sam ended up marrying Bella Rose Hawk and had come down to Chinnesing from up there back in the 20th century sometime. Family knows a lot more. I know that there's other children too that are listed under William and Hannah. I just didn't put them in. And there's lots more where this came from. I don't know how many documents I found, but hopefully we can gather like this and talk a little bit more once everybody has time. Oh, so moving on. It's 8:44. Sounds good. We're right on schedule, I guess. Makwa or Makul Dodem. One of the largest set of documents of the Bear clan I found was from the Ashkew family, uh, mainly Solomon. Solomon had come from Milwaukee and was, I think, of Bodeawatomi descent. It doesn't say when he had come, but I mean, it could have been around the late 30s, early 40s. His name starts to appear with the different headmen and chiefs from Nawash, and as well as on San petitions. States his other names too as well that are on these lists, Solomon, and as well as Abraham. So I know some of them are in Scugog too right now. So this family traveled as well. I don't know if there's any out over in Shingaming today, but or Sagin. Not too sure. Some other miscellaneous ones. We have Thomas Bebamash, George Kaboshkong, it looks like it says, as well as John Kiwakwane, and John Mandawab. So there's some more families from Saugeen and San too as well, and more of from the petition to Governor General Head in 1855. So we got different variations of Makwadodem. Some of these names like James Shingles, I don't see too often. Some more from Bebamash and Mandawab. And on the 1851 Derby Census, I did see Solomon Mandawab from state that he came from Saginaw Bay, Zagama Bay. His wife was from Saugeen, and their child was born at Colpois Bay. So, and around that time period when he arrived, I know there was another wave. I did actually find the paper, but it's in French. So it shows another list of families that had come in the late 1840s. Not to get that transcribed, I guess, translated. Another one, the Root family. So Riley Root's family. We had Gamal Riley Root and Roots from Chinmasing that had come from Saugeen. Going through the documentation, I know some of the families asked me in the past, if I found anything, and I never found anything prior to 1860. And I did that translation in the Anishinaabe name and tried to find something, and I couldn't find anything until 1861, annuity receipt, and as well as the census, and then on a petition from 1869. Government was trying to get more land, so they had petitioned against it. And then from the 1871 census, we see David Root and Charlotte Root, and their children, Jesse, Daniel, and Georgina. And I seen, and as well as William Root. In 1881, we have more, as well as Eliza and Henry Jones at the bottom living in their home. So I say to myself, well, is this the family of David or Charlotte? I went back in the censuses and I found that it was actually Charlotte's parents that were living with them and listed in this home. So again, just to recap, Henry Jones was the brother of Chief John Kabagabo Jones, who had left Coldwater, was part of Nottawasaga Bay, and had settled at Nawash, Big Bay, and then again at Cape Croker, and passed away in 1852. So this is his brother Henry. So his daughter married David Root. So here's some more. And then we have Elijah Root in the 1891 census, being 17 years old, and as well as 7 years old in 1891, 17. And then going down, Charlotte spelled with an S. And then we don't see him, or Elijah's on there as being 26 in 1901. And then in 1911 census, we have a Riley Root living at Cape Croker with his grandmother, Eliza Cake. So I'm like, okay, when did her name change? And it states that she's 70 years old here, where in, 30 years prior, she was 79. So I don't know if this is, I know there was a KK family that came from Michigan, for those interested in this information. I back checked it, and it doesn't, those ones were young when they had, from the 51 Derby census. They would have been the same age as David Root. So I don't see anybody with that name KK any older than that, but I can do a double check again. So again, in right in the 1851 Derby census, we have Henry Jones and Eliza Jones, and then Charlotte Jones as on the next page as their daughter at 7 years old. So that verified that for me. And then I found this afternoon, just doing an ancestry search, David Root's death registry. So it states that he was born in Sarnia. He was born in, or he passed away in 1930. He was 70 years old. No, 96, sorry. And as well as says his father's name down there. It says Chevik Root. I'm like, what the hell is Chevik? So I think that's just a bad translation for the word root. Okay. So here's just some of the generations from the root. I know when I was in council, and well, at the end of my term in 2018, I was up in Nibissing for the All Ontario Chiefs Council, and they were electing the current and present Chief of Ontario, and I had attended a ceremony there, and afterwards I had talked with Gima Vernon Root, and I inquired about that because members of the Root family had come to me and asked if I found any more regarding Riley Root's ancestry and history and so forth, and clan. And what Gima Root told me at that time period, that they were a Bear clan, and that they had that they were of the relations of the Ojik family from Manitoulin Island. So whether this one is part of that down in Amshinong area, I'm not too sure. More work can be done regarding that. I mean, maybe it was just down there, maybe it was just born there, you know what I mean? Those kind of things. But I haven't found anything within any of the lists regarding the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation in terms of Zageen, Nawash, Cape Croker, or Gold Boys Bay. But it's just a little bit of what I found, I'm sure. I was hoping to put a picture up of Riley Root. I thought I had one, but I must have left it in my other phone when I threw it away. I thought I downloaded it, but I couldn't find it and stuff, so my apologies. Sandy family, we have another one stating that they were a Bear clan, or they are Bear clan. Seen some of these names from the 1856 census. Nakanabi, the Gamawid, and the Bonagijik. And I think that they are of relations, because when I go over to the 62 census, they're listed as Adawas that are in there. And looking later on within some other names within the 72 census, it says widow of the chief. So Nabanagijik, we see that name in that 56 census, and Naganub, which I think is different translations for Chinago, as well as a daughter there. Shono Bize. It's written differently in the 56 census. So, and then there's a James, looks like a Wagamu. It's hard to tell within the E's and the W's. It looks like two E's. Huey Lewis. So moving forward within this, we went back to the Anishinaabek and Moose Deer Point historical review from Konecki, and he states some interesting stuff in there from some of the interviews that he had. The Sandys are Odawa from Wisconsin who arrived on Christian Island in 1854, knew that. They had belonged to the group of Roman Catholic Odawa mentioned shortly before the settlement of the island by the Bose Island Band. With them had come the Nanabush family, of whom one descendant, James Nanabush Jr., or Keewaydon, left an account of their last years in the United States. According to Gueden, the Sandys were descendants of Chief Noganub. They had lived in a large village called Namian Watakong, or Praying Tree. Apparently, this large Indian village was in the neighborhood of Chicago. From this village, they were driven out by American soldiers. They first hid in a swamp by the name of Muskegon. Then they had to flee again and stayed in a village of Gajagans, Debonsing. Here they remained 1 or 2 years. They received annuities either from the British or Americans. Then the group of Odawa and Potawatomi built large canoes to get across to Canada. There they first settled on Christian Island, with some moving to Perry Island. So I thought that was pretty interesting in terms of some more information regarding the family. I looked back in those Helen Hornbeck Tanner maps, and I didn't see this village. It just says Chicago or Fort Dearborn. So I'll continue to look. And there's the maps right there. So it gives a good idea. Again, around southern part of Lake Michigan, Chicago, Fort Dearborn, going up to Muskegon up here, and then up towards County or Chimagobing, which I do believe is, it's also called Cat's Head in other old maps. So I think that's what they're talking about earlier, where a lot of those families were at. I hadn't had a chance to do the Nanabush family within this series, but I want to talk a little bit about them because they had their relations that come from different points all around Lake Michigan and southeastern Lake Superior, where there was another village there, and then they had come and married into one of the families at Chimagobing. And then this other map just shows some of the village that are in around Grand Traverse Bay. So some more within the Sandy family. Again, from the applications, it talks a little bit about, this is Michael Sandy's application. Talks about his daughters, as well as his wife. He also talks about how he had lived at Cape Croker for 20 years, and had moved back to Chimising 16 years prior to this. So it would have been about 1896. So from 1876 to 1896, he was in Cape Croker, and that history is with the family too. I mean, they all say, "Oh, we came from Cape Croker, or whatever." A lot of other families too, as well. The Peters family was over there too, just back and forth throughout time, right? I don't know what really happened once the Addison's band had come back over to Bullsley Island, but there was a lot of people that had left in the early 70s, 1870s, right? Going to Moose Deer, going to Wasauksing, going to Cape Croker, and so forth. So I think it was just that rift within religions and other things too as well. So it gives a good breakdown in terms of who his family was. His father's father was James Sandy Gichinago, and he was the son of William Monkika or Kiki. I haven't found that name in any of the lists. It gives us lists of his brother and sister, William Sandy and Hannah Akwenzi, and as well as the Weiss family, Peters family. So a little bit more. It also talks about the Wabatek connection too as well, within and the Ogamosh connection. I should have put on my other document because all these applications in the past, well, probably in the last couple of months, I ended up rewriting them all. I'm going to show you within the Sunday one. It's a little bit different. It's just a little hard for me to read right now. Might need glasses. So here we have a little breakdown of the Sandy family on Chimising, Mokwadodem. William Monkey, second generation. James Gichinago, married Jane B. Sandy. So this is from that. This is information from that list. Joseph Sandy married Angelique Mitchell. We talked about the Mitchell family earlier. Um, and she was the granddaughter of Chief Walbon. Um, fourth generation, Michael Sandy, William Sandy, and Miss Hannah Akawenzi. So fifth generation from Michael Sandy and Elizabeth Peters. Uh, we had Gracie Sandy, Louisa Sandy, and Edmund Sandy. And then I know Michael Sandy had more than one wife throughout his lifetime. I've only found Catherine. I know I had something written down. I talked with Counselor Sandy from Bosley Island or Bosley First Nation all the time about this in the past. So I I think I had it on my other computer, which I wrote because I know that her late husband, his father isn't on this list either, and he was a what's called this a son of Michael Sandy. So Michael Sandy was her father's or her husband's grandfather, right? So we have Rachel Sandy and then Frances Sandy too as well, which married my grandfather's sister, and then had another children prior to as well. And my great grandpa Simpson, he had married Louisa Sandy, and none of the family knew this. I had just found it in the archives, and I found it on Ancestry too as well, and they had no clue. But she was one of the ones who had passed away during that time of the Spanish flu over 100 years ago, where a lot of our people had went on to that Fingishmuk. So moving on to the Sunday family, it's 9 o'clock. So this is the last family. I'm going a little bit overboard, and not too many slides here too as well. Another family who goes by Mukwadodem from Chimnasing. And some other names. I one of the names is uh, it was in Naganabi. That's part of the Sandy family. Machikuis. I know I'm saying that wrong because I pronounced it differently the other day, but within the Moose Deer Point Historical Review, we have the Reverend E. Swallows, who had transferred the Methodist mission to Christian Island in 1857 during a description of the Dawa and Potawatomi, the great medicine man of the Dawa. Oh, this should be Kajada, Shate, wears a long coat made of dark print leggings embroidered with silk ribbon, a large silver brooch on his breast, and a silver ring in his nose, and a shawl on his head like a turban. So I thought that was pretty neat. I've actually tried to find Solo's documentation, but it's in Toronto, and I don't think I'll be going there anytime soon. But hopefully I can request it and get it scanned and sent if I pay a fee. I thought this was a good indication in terms of um, relationship to Majiquis. That's how you say it, Majiquis. So later on in the Salt Diaries, I found more information in terms of first names, Joseph, Majiquis, as well as some more down here in terms of his children, Johnson and Jane. And then, so we have Joseph Majiquis, we got a name. And then that name, that Sunday name doesn't, in the 1871 name, they took the name of the Reverend. It says Swallows or Swallows. So all those ones that were listed under Sunday and the family Sunday in the 1891 census, you can see their names. You go back and you see them as the last name or surname Swallow. It's kind of weird because I don't find anything else within that time period of the 60s with their names on it. They weren't on the authorized land schedule in 1869, but I don't know. They could have been traveling too, because some of them, I mean, they're all over. So this was what I was talking about earlier, some of the documents that I had transcribed back in December. I just wanted to do it because it was hard for me to read those old documents. So I finally did it after all these years. So this was the wife of Joseph Majiquis or Sunday, Christina Abbey, stated that she was born at Potato Island. So Panique Conning. Again, talked about that, where many people, it's recorded that they were born there. So Joseph Sunday, he died at 70 years of age, and their siblings were his siblings was Mrs. John Isaac, John Sunday, Mrs. Jane Manitoba, it says, or I can imagine it'd be Manitowabi from Wisconsin, Joseph Sunday, Johnson Sunday, and oh no, those are their children, sorry. And then Jackson Sunday. A little bit more from those documents. Just a screenshot of those Word documents. And it says, where were they born? Father born near Michigan and mother in the state of Wisconsin. So talks about her family a little bit more. And then it says, gives the names of, it should be wives, but she crossed it out and put husbands, father and mother. And it says Kashate, but our others tell me Ashate and Besikwe. And they were both born in Michigan. So a little breakdown of the family. I have more to this too as well. I've talked with elder some of the elders from the family in the past. Velma, one of them. Late Adley too. I talked with about and shared some of these documents a few years back. So it gives a little breakdown. I know I've got more regarding the rest of that list I can share with the family at another date. So miigwech. 6 minutes over. How's everybody doing out there? We got some survivors. So sorry, I didn't have the chat open to see some questions, so I'm just gonna go over it. Is there anybody that has any comments or anything prior to me reading? Anybody want to ask me anything? Muskenoji, yeah. Dishkan Zibi, yeah. Dishkan Zibi, I've heard that too as well. We're around there. Nishko say, I think that was that that tree crying from Rama. So yeah, so we got some hanging around. We're gonna do the, let's see a question. Within my PowerPoint available, I still want to touch some things up and add to it in the future, Lori. So I'll let you know. We do have this is being recorded, so there's going to be some more stuff going on in the future. Still kind of want to go over things, I guess you would say. There's no other questions. Is there any other? I don't see it. We'll get to the draw then. Oh, I see another question. Sorry, guys, just looking over. Karen, you still there?
I'm here.
Hopefully, I didn't put anybody to sleep.
No, we're out here.
That was 90 slides. Eh? It took me quite a few days to do that one up. I was working on it right until 6 o'clock, so I wanted to try to get things going. It takes a long time to do that work because you got, I mean, when you got a whole archive almost of different documents, you're trying to find things. I do have a little bit of, I mean, a kind of log I refer back to. So see a lot of me glitches. Teresa, hopefully that helped you out. I know you want to know a little bit more about the root family, so I'm sure there's more within the family that can help out. I know some of the root families say they're Eagle clan too, so I don't know. Okay, there was another from D Panasi. Yeah, the recording should be going on tomorrow or the next day whenever Karen has time to do it, and so it'll be on the website. And I'll be putting up those links on my own website too as well. So you can refer to either the Cultural Alliance website or my website. All right, thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Auntie Lori. A lot of good miigwitches. Oh, all right. That being said, let's get rolling here. We still got 29 people, so hopefully we'll hit it on the head here with our draw. So I'm going to share the screen once again. Okay, I'm gonna click her up. So this is a chance to win frame print by myself, sized 11 by 14 inches. You can pick any of my paintings within my website, White Bear Art. Jody Williams. Do we have a Jody Williams there, Karen?
No.
Okay, let's go again. Hopefully we won't be at this too long. Been a long day. Andrew Mandaman. Andrew there?
It doesn't look like it, no.
Yep. Or Lee McGregor?
No.
Come on. Not stats, Pangoish? No?
I don't see them, no.
Yvonne Corbier, oh, you want? I already thought I took her out.
Well, she's here tonight.
Well, she can win that one. And Irene Ashworth, we'll give Yvonne 2. I didn't really make any rules. Eh?
See Irene's name.
Is she there?
No.
No. Stephanie Recollet?
Nope.
Thank you very much, Valerie. I enjoy your comment. Which Carolyn Wharton?
Nope.
So happens when you get 200 sign up.
Yes.
Yvonne, we're gonna get you another one, okay, sweetie? Lenora Charles?
Nope.
Right on, she says. Myrtle Jameson, are you in the crowd, Myrtle?
I don't see her.
No. Auntie Myrtle. Language whiz, that one. Lisa Isaac.
Nope.
No. Isaacs. Lisa Isaac.
No, I don't see her.
Okay. Tori Kress, are you there?
Nope.
No dice.
First week she was.
Busy lady that one.
Yes.
Sandra Mixamong.
Yes.
Yeah. Sandy, all right. Sandy Yvonne, congratulations. I see we have a hand up by Yvonne. Did you want to talk? You have a question? Sandy Mixamong and Yvonne Corbier. Nope, your hand's down. All right. So that's that. I know there's a lot more families within Southern Georgian Bay. These are just some of the ones that I've been able to find. Some of those clan marks and identification markers, and some other histories regarding the First Nations, and as well as some of the ones from Chimney Singh that I've been able to understand and learn throughout the years. So hopefully, we'll do some. I'll be able to do some more work in the future regarding some other historical narratives. Hopefully place names, and that's something that I'd really like to do and try to help out with other people who know a little bit more than I do and try to locate these things. I'm an avid canoeer, so I like to go to all these different places with my kids every summer. I'm already planning right now. So I just want to say miigwech for everybody who participated. I hope you enjoyed the show. And like I said, if you ever need anything else or want to know a little bit more about the Cultural Alliance, please visit their website. Or if you want to buy any art, visit my website too on www.whitebearart.com. I do commissions. I do, genealogical work like I showed you, different other historical research and so forth. So it's just not just art. I like to dabble in other things too as well besides painting. So yeah, so I just want to say miigwech and everybody have a good night. So, mio.